Hi guys, it's Sam for Digital Meat, and in this tutorial we're going to be taking a look at how we can create height maps in Cinema 4D and bring them into Unity, and why this would be an advantage for us. So I've created a Unity project. There's nothing in there at the moment apart from a directional light and a main camera. So I think I'm going to get rid of the main camera. I'm going to import a package which will be characters. And I'm just going to import all of it. That's fine. There we go. And I'm just doing this so I can get a first-person character controller out of it, so we can actually walk around our terrain. Come on, there we go. Okay, right. So if we go to characters, there should be a first person character. There's some prefabs, and this is what we want, the FPS controller. So if we just dump that in our scene, we can see it's there. I'm just going to zero out its position so we know it's at world 0. And then if I've got my mouse in the viewport, I can press F, I think, and it will frame my object. So it zooms into it. So let's grab that and just raise it up slightly. I'm also going to go to the lighting tab, and it's not on auto build at the moment, which is good because we don't need that for the purposes of this. If we go up to our menu here and go to create, go down to 3D object, terrain, it'll create a terrain like this, and its actual corner is going to be at world 0. So what I'm going to do is select the terrain, go into its settings, which is this little cogwheel here, go down to the bottom. We can see that its terrain width is 500 by 500. So I'm just going to go back up to its position and affect the X. So this should be half of 500, so minus 250. And I gather it's going to be the same for the Z. Yeah. Call that minus 250, and now it's actually sat where our player is. If I press F again, he's smack bang in the middle of the terrain, which is great. Okay, so why would we want to use Unity's terrain other than, say, bring in build our terrain in Cinema 4D and just export as geometry? And it's because Unity's terrain actually will tessellate and change depending on player distance. So if you've got a load of detail out here and your player's in the middle, like ours is, it doesn't need to have a lot of detail. So it changes dynamically. So if we go to our terrain and go to this first tool, which is raise and lower terrain, these tools can be used to let's see just where we are. There we go. Let's get in there. Okay, so that's our player. This is actually quite a big terrain, this. That 500 is by 500 actually represents meters. But yeah, if we go back to our terrain and go to our inspector, go to the raise or lower tool here, we can actually raise some parts of the terrain there. We've raised it up there. Go back to our player controller and just press play. We can see what we got. So this is our terrain as it stands. So you can see there's the height there that we've just made. And if we actually have a look in our scene view, we can see that you can actually see on the grid that this part of the mesh needs more detail, because obviously we've actually got some height information, whereas out here it's got a lot less detail because it's just flat, so it really doesn't. So that's one of the advantages to using the terrain object. So we could use the tools in Unity to build our terrain like I've just done. There's also some other things you can do. you can smooth the height. So if I just zoom in here, you can see that the edge of this sort of fin sticking out the ground is a bit jaggedy on the edges. We can actually use this tool to smooth out that backbone, and it looks a lot less jagged. But there's also another way to change this mesh, and that's via a height map. So how do we create height map data to bring into Unity so it can affect this terrain? So I'm going to leave Unity for now and flip to Cinema 4D, and we've got a scene here. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to create a landscape. So if you go to our primitives, go to landscape, it will generate this kind of thing. So I'm just going to change the display to shading lines. You can see there's quite a lot of polygons there. So obviously to, you know, say I wanted to use this mesh and then export to Unity, I could do that, but there's a lot of geometry there. Some of it really isn't needed. So say here, that could all be one polygon really, because it's just flat. So this is the advantage of making a height map. I'm just going to go to filter and change that. So take the grid off. Right, let's set up our landscape. So I think the terrain in Unity was 500 meters by 500 meters. Ours is centimeters, but it really doesn't matter because we're creating a height map from this data, so that will fit to our terrain anyway. I'm just going to see what the height setting on this is. Terrain height is 600. Okay. Again, let's have a look. Okay, so let's just let's get to it and set up our landscape. So width segments, I'm going to actually boost this up a little bit, 150 maybe. Actually, let's make this 200. We'll make that 200. There we go. I'm also going to turn off borders at sea level. So then it will just give us, instead of like a mountain in the middle kind of thing, it will give us a more random sort of thing there. It looks quite hilly, so we can define how our landscape's going to look with the rough furrows and fine furrows. So obviously the more rough furrows I've got in there, the more dense. So if I just drag it out this way a bit, it's a little bit more smoothed out. I might give that, I don't know, 25%. In fact, I'm going to, just so I can get a better lay of it, I'll drag that out. Fine furrows. You can obviously see it's a lot more janky like that. So I think I'm just going to leave that at 50%. I think that's going to be fine for us. And then you've got a plateau level. So you can kind of get this kind of thing going on. And you've also got the sea level as well. So it almost sort of like, see where it does there. So I'm just going to leave those settings as they were. This, I think I'm going to bring down a little bit. Yeah. And I'm going to change the seed as well, just so we get some sort of different geometry. Maybe something a little bit more. So we've got some nice features in there. Yeah, that's quite good. Quite like that. Okay, so how do we bake this thing out to a height map? Right, well, first of all, I've got the result that I wanted, and I'm going to make this landscape editable. So now it's got a UV map. And to check that this is actually, if you go to Window, go to Body Paint 3D and go to New Texture View, we can actually show the UV mesh of our landscape, and we can see that it's divided up into its polygons and it's laying flat on the UV. There are no overlapping polygons, which is exactly what we want, which is great. So that's good. So we're going to create a material. I'm going to call this height map. We're going to turn off the color and the reflectance, and we're going to turn on the luminance channel. And in the luminance channel, we're going to create a gradient, and in our gradient we're going to say it's 2dV, so that's vertical. And then I'm going to apply this to our object, go to our projection method and say flat. And then I'm just going to turn on the texture mode, and here we go. We can see that that doesn't actually fit our object. So what we can do is select our landscape, go to tags, and then you've got this fit to object. So we can hit that, and now from its lowest point to its highest point, this gradient's been mapped. So the lowest point here is going to be darker, and the highest point is going to be brighter, as in white. Okay, so that looks all good. Now, this is an important point to note. If we press this button, we can go back to our actual project settings. I think you can also press, if I'm not wrong, Shift D, or is it Control D? Control D. It will take you to your project settings. And this may sound weird to Cinema 4D users, because we're going to go down to linear workflow and actually turn it off. We all know that working in linear workflow is a godsend in Cinema 4D, and Cinema 4D's had it for quite a while. But for this case, we actually want to turn it off. And then we go into our height map, go to the luminance, go into the gradient, and then if you twirl down this little arrow here, you've got the interpolation. So how this gradient is working, and it's currently set to smooth knot, but we actually want to turn this to linear. Okay, and the reason that we're going to do that, and I've actually done some tests myself when bringing the height maps into Unity, is that the terrain in Unity matches our geometry in Cinema 4D way more closely when we do this, when we take off linear workflow in the project settings, and we change our interpolation of the gradient to linear. So I would definitely recommend doing that. Okay, so that's that. We got that done. Good. Okay, so next step. For our landscape object, we're going to go to the object tab at the top and say bake texture. Right, first things first. In this tag, the bake texture tag, call our file name landscape, and it's going to ask, well, what it's called and where it's going. So I'm going to open up this. I'm going to go to my documents, Unity projects, Cinema 4D test, and go into my assets. And I'm going to create a folder in here. I'm just going to call it imports. There we go. And in there, in my imports, I'm going to create another folder called height maps. Okay, so I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to call the file that we're going to bake out, the image, height map _01. So we don't know if we're going to make several yet. So that's a good way to go. Okay, so we've now got, we've got the location of the path where it's going to be saved out. The file format, I'm going to keep on Photoshop PSD, because we're actually going to open up Photoshop in a minute, because we're going to have to change what type of file it is. And you'll see in a moment. I'll explain that. Single file, we don't need to worry about that. Color depth. This is quite important. It needs to be 16 bits per channel, the color depth, because that's what Unity is expecting. And the width and the height of the image itself. Now, this is very important. Usually we work in powers of 2. So in this case, we've got 256, and then you'll get 512. 1K texture is usually 1024, and then The next one up is 2048. I'm actually going to save it out as 2048, but with a slight caveat, because the way the algorithm works in Unity, it basically, what it's trying to do is trying to pair the pixels of our image to the vertices of the terrain mesh, and in order to do that properly is to add 1. So normally you'd have a power of 2 like this, 2048, but actually what you want to make it is 2049. I'm not going to get into the, the nitty gritty of why that is, but it's a power of 2 plus 1. So we've done that. Then we've got a pixel border here. We don't need any pixel border, so we can take that off. Yeah, that's set. Everything there set exactly how we need it to be. And so now we get to choose our channels. What do we want to bake out? Well, in our material, it's in the luminance channel. So we need to bake out our luminance channel. So if we go back to our bake tag, click on luminance. We have some options with the drop down of luminance. We don't want diffusion, so we leave that unchecked. Optimal mapping. Well, we don't need to change the mapping for this object because we already checked it. And we've got nice flat polygons and all the rest of it, so we're good. No, nothing in details. Okay, so we can make a preview of this now, so let's hit preview and see what we get. Right, okay, that's our height map. It looks a little bit janky there because it's a preview, so it's a low-res version of it. So it looks like it's working as we want, so let's hit the bake button. That was quite quick. One thing I might do, actually, if you go back to the tag tab, we do get this super sampling value, and basically that means anti-aliasing for the image, so it's oversamples it. So I might crank that up to 2. Your bake will probably take a bit longer, but won't be significant. So I'm going to bake again. It's detected that file already exists and says I'm going to overwrite it, so let's say yes to that, and then we've got a bake out. As you can see, it is a little bit slower because of that super sampling value, but it will be a lot smoother, which is great. Okay, so we're just going to wait for that to be done. Excuse me a minute, I'm just going to take a drink. Okay, we're nearly there, guys. Come on, come on, come on. Okay, right. So there's several reasons now we've got to open up that file in Photoshop. So, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up my documents, go into Unity projects, Cinema 4D test, assets, imports, height maps. This is where we saved our PSD. So this will open Photoshop now. It's taking its sweet time. Come on. Yeah, so like I said, there's several different reasons we're opening this file in Photoshop. One is that this height map in Cinema 4D has been baked out just as a normal, it's a PSD, but it's a regular image. It's RBG information. So one of the reasons that we want to open up in Photoshop, and there's our lovely height map. So let's just whack this on 100% and see what it looks like up close. Yeah, nice and smooth, lovely. Okay. So we've got 16 bits for our image, but it's RGB. Unity isn't expecting an RGB image. It's actually expecting a grayscale image. So what we want to do is go up to our image, go to Mode, click Grayscale. It says discard color information to control the conversion, use image adjustments black and white. We don't need to worry about that. If we press discard, what it basically does, I think, is dump all the information in one channel because it is black and white. So that's fine. Another thing that we need to do is actually the file type Unity is expecting. It is not expecting a PSD. The reason that I saved it out as a PSD is because it's lossless. If I saved it as a JPEG, then brought it into Photoshop, you're compressing it again, and so I didn't want that. So I saved it as a PSD out of Cinema 4D, but out of here, we're actually going to go down, save as. We're going to save it out as a Photoshop RAW. That is what Unity is expecting. And you can see all of these options are grayed out. That's fine. So let's save that. Now, it'll actually ask here, but we don't have to worry about anything else apart from these two things. Byte order. Is it Macintosh or IBM PC? It actually doesn't matter which one of these you pick. You can choose Macintosh or IBM PC. But when you import into Unity, you just got to make sure that whatever you exported out in Photoshop as is what you're importing as in Unity. In my case, I'm working on a PC, so I'm going to choose IBM PC because it makes sense. It's easy to remember. So IBM PC, okay. That's going to shoot out. Now if I go back into Unity, it's going to detect some changes. Let's have a look. Okay, so let's have a look in our imports folder, height maps. And there they are, sitting there. Lovely. Okay, so here's our terrain. If I go into import raw, which is, if you select the terrain, it's on this settings wheel here, go down to the bottom, import raw. So let's import. Let's go to our assets folder, imports, height maps, and we've got this raw file. So we're going to open that, double click on it. Right, depth 16-bit, that's correct. It says here it must be either 8 or 16-bit. I recommend using 16-bit because it reduces the banding that you'd get in the image and just the quality in general. So I'd suggest 16-bit. The width is 2049, so power 2 plus 1. The byte order is Windows. Now, if I'm correct, I think we need to flip this vertically. I'm not going to do it. I just want to see how it turns out. But what I will do is have a look at the actual landscapes. So we've got 500 by 500 and 90 centimeters. So this is actually 500 by 500, but 600. So it's going to be stretch out the height. So I'm going to actually change the Y direction in Unity so it matches our Cinema 4D landscape, which is 90. So I'm going to put that in here and say 90. I'm going to import that. Now, there you go. We've got our height data in. But does it match? So let's just kind of take off our luminance for a minute and turn on the colour, just so we can get a bit of a lay of the land there. Open up Unity. Okay. So it basically looks exactly the same as the image we got in Cinema 4D, but mirrored. Basically, so you can see this looks like a little foot or something, like a leg. And if you look at it in Cinema 4D, it's kind of the other way round, unless we do that. Am I being mental? No, it is mirrored. So basically, what I am going to do is, and I think I've just started up SpeedTree. Yeah, I have. Lovely. Okay, let's quit out of that. Excuse me. So what I'm going to do is go to Import RAW again. Go to exactly where the height map was before. Everything else is the same, apart from this is flipped vertically. So now, we should have something that matches our thing in Cinema 4D. So that's great. So I'm just going to pull my character controller up so he's not underneath the terrain. In fact, he's going to be right on the top there. Okay, so let's just press play and have a look. Okay, so he's falling down, and there's our terrain, purely made from a height map in Cinema 4D. You can see the top of this ridge is actually quite janky, and that's because you can actually still do additional work in Unity. So if I come out of this, and obviously that top there isn't very, very good. So we can actually select our terrain, go to our smooth tool, and actually let's select the brush size. And the opacity is actually sort of like the strength of it. So as you can see, I'm smoothing that out now. Looks a lot nicer. So there we go. So we can actually still affect our height map terrain within Unity with the standard tools. So there we go. That looks a lot nicer. And as you can see, when I'm painting on the smooth, you can see that the terrain is being displayed at its sort of like, you know, the highest detail. And then as it comes off, you can see that it sort of adapts to what's needed. So let's press our controller again. Get up the hill. And there you go. That looks a lot smoother, a lot nicer. Brilliant. So there we go. We've got our terrain in there. That's great. There may be a way, actually, we can smooth out the terrain within Photoshop. So here we have our information. In fact, if we just want to check my bake settings a minute. Yeah, maybe if we had a larger resolution, it might actually come out nicer. So I might actually try that. So if it's 2048 times 2, that's 4096. But obviously we want a power of 2, which is 4096 plus 1, so it's 4097. So we're going to do both for that. Okay, that's good. I'm going to bring the super sampling down to 1 because because it's quite a high resolution. We'll be sat here all day if we do that. Let's preview it, make sure it's fine. Oh yeah, that's right. I've got to put my gradient back on so we can actually get the height map information out. There we go. It's a good job I did a preview then. So if we preview it again, yeah, we've got height map information. Yeah, it's already in existence, so we're going to wipe over that. So like I said, this is trial and error really. If I had any sense about me, I would have done this test before the tutorial. But something important to note, the changes that I made with this smooth tools, and it's not just the smooth tool as well. Even with this height map data, I can still use the tools in Unity. So if I want to add some height to my scene, I can still do that. Let's make the opacity of this brush a little bit harsher. There we go. So as you can see, I'm adding a new ridge there. So you can add on top of this height map data, which is great. So yeah, you can still use the Unity tools. That is quite a large terrain, that. Okay, so let's go back to Cinema. That's nearly finished the bake now. So there we go, our bake's complete. Let's shut this down. No, we don't want to save that. Let's go back to our thing. So this is a raw. Don't need that anymore because we're going to be overwriting that again. So same thing again. Let's go up to image, mode, grayscale. Yeah, we can discard the color information. And then we're going to go save. I'm going to save this out as a Photoshop raw file. Boom. We're going to have IBM PC for the byte order because I'm on PC. Go back to Unity. I'll have a little think because it's detected a change in the height map. And then we go to our terrain. Go to the settings. Scroll down to the bottom. Import raw. Okay. Assets. Imports. Height maps. Select our raw. Flip vertically. And everything else is fine. Import. Okay. So to be honest, not really that much of a difference, even though that we had a high resolution map. It might be to do with the way that this height map's actually been looked at. In fact, it probably is. So let's go into advanced. Actually, this advanced tab for our raw height map is going to have no change on our map whatsoever, because it's being read by the actual terrain thing. So for things like this, I think we are actually going to have to use Unity's tools to smooth it out. What I might do as a little test here actually is go into a filter, go to the blur, and maybe do a Gaussian blur on this, and maybe, I don't know, let's make it quite extreme and see what happens. 4 maybe 10. Can't really tell. 100. There we go. That had an effect. So maybe 50 then. Yeah, you can see that had an effect. So let's half that. We don't want to get rid of too much of our detail. So we're going to do that. Go back to File, Save As, Photoshop Raw. Yeah, we want to overwrite that. Save. Yeah, want to replace it. Brilliant. Now why are we getting different options here? Let's have a look. Our image mode is grayscale, 16 bits. Yeah, that's absolutely fine. Save as. We don't want to save our layers. In fact, that should all be grayed out when I pick Photoshop Raw. Okay, so yeah, we're going to replace it. I don't know why we're getting this information here, but let's choose our IBM PC. Okay, go back to Unity. Let's see if that blurring actually had any effect. It might not have done. Go back to our assets, imports, height maps, choose our camera raw again, flip vertically, 16 bits, yep, that's great. Let's bring it in. Has it changed our map at all? Yes. So just by blurring it slightly, it's actually smoothed out those crimps on the top of the hill there, and smoothed out a lot of the other stuff as well. So that's one way. If you're getting jaggies on the top of hills and stuff like that, that'd be one way to smooth it out. There's still a little bit going on here, although when you're on it, you're probably not going to see it. So if we press play, should have turned off those annoying footsteps for now. But yeah, there you go. So that's pretty much how you create a height map in Cinema 4D, and using the luminance channel and this vertical gradient. It's how you get it out to Unity. So I hope that's been helpful for you guys. Remember, check out the website digitalmeat.uk, and also the Facebook page. You can find it under Digital Meat 3D, I think, and same with the Twitter. It's Digital Meat 3D. So yeah, cheers for watching, guys. Bye.